Hey guys, welcome back to the video. In this video, I'm giving you guys a spoiler-free review of Ridley Scott's newest movie, The Last Duel. Jean de Carousse is a respected knight known for his bravery and skill on the battlefield. Haquis Legris is a squire whose intelligence and eloquence makes him one of the most admired nobles in court. When Legris viciously assaults Caroux's wife, she steps forward to accuse the attacker in an act of bravery and defiance that puts her life in jeopardy. The ensuing trial by combat, a grueling duel to the death, places the fate of all three of these characters in God's hands. I know I pronounced a lot of those names wrong and I apologize for that, but nevertheless, this movie was an absolute banger. What makes this movie so special to me, number one, is the story. I think this movie really perfects what Ridley Scott does best, which is storytelling in and of itself. First of all is the truth. Now, we see this movie from three different perspectives. It's a three-way complex story. We start off with Matt Damon's story, then we get Adam Driver's character story, and then we get Jodie Comer's story. Now, I'm going to refer to these characters by their actors' names because another thing that I really loved about this movie was the performances. Also, I don't feel like saying their super long names every single time I mention them, so I will be referring to them by their actors. But really quickly, before I keep talking about the story, I want to talk about the performances. The performances in this movie were absolutely awesome. I truly loved all of the performances. Matt Damon in this movie has one of my favorite performances of the year. Now, Adam Driver, phenomenal. Jodie Comer, phenomenal. They are all phenomenal in this movie, but I don't know why Matt Damon really just stuck out to me here. I will say Jodie Comer felt like she had less opportunity to put on an acting show than Matt Damon did, even though the story mainly revolved around Jodie Comer's character's accusations towards Adam Driver's character. But yeah, nonetheless, I still think that Matt Damon's character put on an absolutely phenomenal show for us. So did Jodie Comer and Adam Driver. But going back to the story, now, like I said before, this story has three ways of telling one story. It tells the same exact story from three different perspectives. You start off with Matt Damon's story, and in this story, you don't get to see anything. You don't get to witness anything that happens because the main accusation is rape, and that basically comes between Adam Driver and Jodie Comer's character. So you don't get to see the truth or the lie until you get to the second part of the movie, which is basically the second act, where you see Adam Driver's character's point of view. But then next up, after that, you see Jodie Comer's character's point of view, which is the truth, technically, as it's said in the movie. Obviously, that's not spoilers. It's literally in the synopsis of the movie, and also it's basically hinted in the trailer that they're gonna duel. I mean, it's called The Last Duel for a reason, so obviously they're gonna duel to the death. I'm not gonna tell you who dies or who lives or if no one dies, but I will say that the way the story is told really elevates it. Now, I was going through some Letterboxd reviews before watching this movie, some spoiler-free ones, of course, and a lot of people said that they didn't like the way the story was structured because it just felt like a retelling of the same thing. During the movie itself, I was really engaged because I wanted to know, because initially we see Matt Damon's character. We don't see what happens when it comes to the accusations of the. But when we see it through Adam Driver's character and then Jodie Comer's character, and then we see the duel and we see how everything in court plays out, when we see those moments, it doesn't feel like the same story because Matt Damon's character didn't see what Adam Driver's character did, and neither did Jodie Comer see what Adam Driver and Matt Damon's story was like before they witnessed all of this stuff and before all the stories connected at that one middle point. And so overall, I think this story mechanic that Scott Ridley chose worked really, really well. I don't want to talk too much about the story because I really don't want to spoil anything for you guys. I think this story is one of the best ones of 2021. Overall, this movie is one of my favorites of this year, but I do think that this story really makes this movie unique. But moving on, I think the characters in this movie were great. As I mentioned before, the performances of the movie were phenomenal. Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, even all the other side performances that I don't know the actors' names, a lot of them were really, really great. The characters themselves, that really goes into that three-way complex storyline. It really helps you connect with each character more and more. Adam Driver's character is a bad dude. You can tell that from the trailer in and of itself, but you connect with this character more until this bad stuff happens. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's really hard to watch, which I'll get into later in this video. But when it comes to just character development, I think that three-way complex story, that whole way that the Ridley Scott really put that together and made it all culminate at the end, makes you know and care about each one of the characters, whether you care about them in a hated way or you care about them in I want them to succeed way. You care about these characters in some manner, and the three-way complex story is really what attributes to that. I haven't mentioned Ben Affleck Affleck. Now, his performance is cool, but it's nothing like passionate and emotional like that really stood out to me. It was a great performance, but it just wasn't anything crazy. His character's also super sidelined, and obviously it's because we have those three main parts of the story: Adam Driver, Matt Damon, and Jodie Comer. We don't have a Ben Affleck part of the story, so it makes sense. But I do like what parts Ben Affleck was in, and I loved his acting in his scenes. Next, I want to talk about the direction. Again, this all plays into the whole story aspect. That's basically the most stuff I can talk about in this movie, is because the story was just so great. It was so complex, and it really worked. Personally, I love the direction of it. When it comes to direction, I specifically want to mention the camera work, the cinematography. Ridley Scott, obviously, most of his films are like beyond beautiful, and this one was no different. The duel in this movie, I'll talk about the duel, the finale, the big stuff that everything builds up to in this movie. I'll talk about that later, but the way the camera is used in this movie is so beautiful. It tells a story in and of itself. The camera work, it really brings a good perspective, because as I said before, this is a three-way complex story. We see three different views of the same events happening. And you can see with different characters, it's different angles. It's obviously different dialogue. The writing in this movie is great, but there's different things that show that it's a differentiating point of view than the last time we saw it. And I think that's why the camera work really works here. Now, personally, I've never seen Game of Thrones, but I will say from what I know about Game of Thrones, this really does resemble it in the best way possible. There's a lot of gore, there's a lot of sex, and there's a lot of medieval themes all around. I mean, there's so much going on. There's a lot of scenes in this movie, not a lot, but there's a few scenes in this movie where it's like, I know it's necessary for the plot. I know it's necessary for this character development. I know it's necessary to see all of this in order to care about the characters, but it's so uncomfortable. There was at least like, I think there was one scene where I like closed my eyes, because I was like, I don't want to see it. I don't care for this. I know it's important. I know it's part of the movie. I know what's going on. I'm just going to close my eyes because I don't want to see this. There is one storyline here with the girl that got, and how one of her friends that she used to think was her friend didn't believe her when she made the accusation towards Adam Driver's character. And so there's a lot of times in which this movie brings back older characters that I personally really forgot about in the beginning, but they bring them back in a really impactful way. But moving past that, the final thing I want to talk about is the finale of this movie. It's called The Last Duel, and the duel does not disappoint. It is so well directed. I'm not going to say much about it because I personally didn't hear much about it beforehand. I watched a video before sitting down to record this talking about the ending, and I really love the ending. I don't want to spoil it for you guys. I don't even want to give like that many hints away, but the one thing I will say is the camera work in this finale is beyond perfect. The duel in this movie is my favorite movie scene of this entire year. I'll tell you guys that. If the only reason you go to watch this movie is number one for the performances and number two for the last duel itself, the 2 hour and 30-minute runtime, though it runs just a little bit longer than it needs to, the duel itself at the end is worth your entire time, I promise you. But now for my final score for The Last Duel, with all of the phenomenal performances, the absolutely awesome three-way complex story, the direction and camera work of this movie, all that combined, I'm gonna have to give this one a 9 out of 10. I think overall this movie is so well made, and I think Ridley Scott is really in his bag with this one. Nevertheless, you need to watch this movie, whether it's at home or in theaters. You need to see this one. This is a must watch of the year in my opinion. But yeah, guys, that's it for this video. If you guys have already seen Ridley Scott's The Last Duel, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new in here and you did enjoy this review. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.